Did Dong Jingwei just defect to the United States of America? Hello, welcome to Dangerous Policy, a channel aimed at intelligent people wanting to discuss important issues facing life and society. My name is Crispin, and news reports have emerged that the deputy leader of China's state security has defected from Beijing to the United States. The reports are that in February, along with his daughter, he went to Hong Kong and then escaped from there to continental US, where he divulged a number of secrets that the Chinese obviously don't want to have revealed. It was said that during the meeting between Secretary Blinken and the Chinese counterparts in Alaska, the Chinese demanded his return. The Americans refused. And further, that Dong Jingwei revealed Wuhan lab secrets, suggesting that the coronavirus that has completely destroyed the world economy and plunged us all into lockdown emerged from the local laboratory. Let's pause this for 1 second and just take account of the fact that this is all rumor. These are unconfirmed reports. It is true that as of the time of this recording, Dong Jingwei has not been photographed or videoed since September of last year in any public forum, indicating that there is possibility behind this. Images of him have been scrubbed from the Chinese search engine Baidu, which would certainly lend credibility to this argument. But nevertheless, I mean, he's a senior member of China's state security apparatus. There will be severe consequences of any such defection. It is entirely possible that these rumors are just hearsay and that his kind of scrubbing from the internet and so on is part of China's normal security operation. So let's not jump to conclusions. It is the case that during the Cold War, defections on both sides were endemic. Most famously, on the Western side, Philby and the Cambridge Five, the UK spies who all defected to the Soviet Union, causing significant death and destruction among sleeper agents who are existing in the Soviet Union, put them at immense risk. And they defected for ideological reasons. They believed secretly in a Marxist communist ideal, and they defected to the Soviet Union. Conversely, there were many defections from the Soviet Union to the West, either for economic reasons, freedom, capitalism, liberalism, free exchange of ideas, sovereignty of the individual. There was a strong ideological as well as financial incentive to jump from one to the other. It is less clear with the Chinese and the United States today, however. China is a very rich country, as is the United States. So economically, both sides can offer immense wealth for defections, but there isn't the same kind of ideological struggle. They're not two blocks that are completely separate with different worldviews of the future. Rather, they have different political systems and they compete strategically, but economically they're deeply enmeshed with one another. You have to really be either afraid for your position or for your life. So perhaps giving credibility to this theory, Dong Jingwei was caught up in a corruption scandal or something, thought he might be arrested and therefore decided to jump ship. But otherwise, it's hard to see why such a senior Chinese official would defect to the United States, given that it puts him, his daughter, at permanent risk. I mean, it'd be very difficult for the Americans to protect him from the Chinese retribution at the same time with him actually enjoying the fruits of his defection. So, unless he's put in a hole someplace deep, dark in the American security apparatus, never to see the light of day again, then the Chinese are very likely going to try and get to him somehow. Same is true for, American defections to China. The Americans have considerable resources to reach those that would betray their country, Edward Snowden notwithstanding. So there is immense risk in taking such a step on both sides. Let's assume that this defection did occur, and it would be the highest level defection in the history of the People's Republic of China, immense strategic benefit to the United States if this did occur, able to potentially threaten the entire counterintelligence system of China. But assuming this did occur, it's another jump to say that as part of the defection, he produced information that supported the Wuhan lab, origin of coronavirus, that hypothesis. And I say this because the reason why the Wuhan lab hypothesis has gotten a new wave of publicity, it's no longer censored by Silicon Valley and the big tech, a lot of people now believe in it, is not because of this random defection that has only emerged in the news today, but rather the fact that Donald Trump is no longer president of the United States. Mike Pompeo is no longer Secretary of State. So a lot of people that disliked those individuals, but nevertheless subscribe to that theory, well, they've crawled out of the woodwork now. All of these scientists that said, actually, it is possible that this virus escaped from the Wuhan lab of virology. There have been the intervention of various comedians like Jon Stewart, who came and said, clearly it came from a lab. There are those that had previously been censored, like Brett Weinstein, a famous biologist, who said, look, I think it came from a lab as well. These things were happening anyway. The narrative was shifting on this issue. It's also in America's interest, let's be honest, for people to believe that it emerged from a lab rather than nature, because even if it came from China, if it was natural, then perhaps no one could have foreseen it. But if it came from a lab, then people can ascribe a different layer of responsibility to the Chinese Communist Party for the pandemic globally. So even if we accept that this defection occurred, which is a big if, it shouldn't automatically follow that the information he provided the Americans was to do with the Wuhan lab, and that's why the narrative on this has changed. It would have changed anyway. I personally think it's more likely, if this defection is real, that he provided information on China's counterintelligence operations, China's spies in the United States, China's influence operations in various governments around the world. That's more his day-to-day business rather than what happened at a lab in Wuhan. I think that's a bit of a stretch myself. That also kind of throws up the question of what I think about the lab leak hypothesis. And the answer is I simply don't know. I don't agree with Professor Weinstein that the evidence is overwhelming that it came from a lab. My dispassionate, unbiased opinion is that it is just as possible that it came from nature. I don't agree with his views that it's super difficult for these viruses to be jumping from animals to humans in such a way that it's equally kind of contagious among humans as it is in these animals. I just think that's not true. There are plenty of other diseases where that is demonstrated not to be true, whether it's from Ebola or Ross River virus or countless other diseases. It is possible for diseases to jump from animals to people, and certainly would be likely to happen in a place like a wet market where there are a lot of exotic animals that don't normally get exposed to humans, therefore would often have much opportunity to jump into species, and yet would have that opportunity here in Wuhan. That said, it is equally likely that pandemic research was occurring at the lab in Wuhan. They were deliberately trying to see whether or not you could get sort of the disease to jump from ferrets or something to humans and see how that process would occur. And for a mistake to occur in which that disease was successful in jumping to humans and then escape from the lab thereafter. I mean, that is just as likely. And that is not to say that the disease was engineered by the Chinese government as a bioweapon or anything like that. That's not a claim that Weinstein makes. It's not something that I would subscribe to either. But what I would say, and I think the record clearly shows, is that the Chinese government has not been cooperative with the international community in actually properly investigating the origins of this virus, which means that the international community is likewise entitled to assume the worst. So the fact that the lab leak theory is now commonplace, I think is entirely appropriate because it's a direct response to China's lack of cooperation on this subject and would be doing everything you would expect a totalitarian government to do when they did have something to hide. Do I think that this defection is related to that reconstitution of the lab leak hypothesis? No, I do not. I think that is a jump that various news articles have artificially made. Do I think this defection is possible? Yes, it could have happened. We will wait and see whether the reports are confirmed. It would be unusual in the post-Cold War era because we're not talking about competitions of ideology. We're talking about straight nationalism. I would think in that environment, such defections would be a lot rarer. But if it did occur, an extraordinary coup for the United States, the treasure trove of information that someone like that would have in the deep bowels of the Chinese communist security apparatus would be utterly invaluable. And I would hope that the United States would be able to protect Dong Jingwei and his daughter and anyone else that sought to defect so as that it could encourage more defections like this in the future in order to keep the West with a security edge. I dearly hope that this is true. We will wait and see. If not, these reports happen often. We will continue to give the necessary disclaimers as to how confident we are in the reports as they emerge. So please do stay tuned. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Give us your views on this down below. Do you think this is a real defection? Do you think it is related to the Wuhan lab hypothesis? Have I been overly cautious in my reporting on this subject? Leave your thoughts and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much. Goodbye.